The Stanley Cup playoffs are 16 days away, and with the Florida Panthers having a recent 2-7-1 stretch, we must ask the question: are the Panthers actually coasting?
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, April 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you follow me on X at MondoMan12, follow show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. You can follow this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And don't forget to smash that like button to help the algorithm here on the YouTube channel. So the Florida Panthers go into this one. It's a game day and a lot to think about in between Tuesday night's matchup against the Montreal Canadiens into going into this one, because of the fact that it's just a strange stretch for the Panthers as far as just results. Not only the results, but how they're playing. And I joked around at the beginning of the skid is this is what the people who did not want the Panthers to win the President's Trophy wanted, right? I got a lot of flack for that as far as but we don't want them to win the President's Trophy, but we don't want them to play like this, which is totally valid as far as that. But when you see like the style of play and just the lack of movement in their defensive zone, and then what happens when they lose their fair share of puck battles, it's very uncharacteristic of this team. So that argument when it comes to that is as valid as can be. And for the Panthers, I mean the pursuit of the President's Trophy looks all but over with the New York Rangers winning the last night against the New Jersey Devils in what was a crazy start to that game with Matt Rempe and Curtis McDermott, who Rempe refused to fight Curtis McDermott after in their last matchup. And crazy how Rempe in 3 games against the Devils has 5 minutes of total ice time in that. And it's you worry about the guy as far as long-term head injuries and all. But Rangers won, and Dallas, they won. They absolutely manhandled Edmonton. I fell asleep at 5-0 last night, and that part of it is over. But think about this too, because the postseason is all about survival of the fittest when it comes to that. The Panthers, for the most part, even though Ekblad had a fractured leg going after game 2 in the Boston series, Sam Bennett had a fractured foot and didn't even tell anybody. Ryan Lomberg had a fractured hand and had to wear a glove that was a lot bigger than what he's used to. And crazy enough, Ryan Lomberg also scored a very important goal in Game 4 against Carolina on a zone exit, which Ryan Lomberg denied, and he created he created that opportunity. Him, Colin White, and Eric Stahl. But really, when it comes to that, it's going to be for the Panthers just not trying to get to the playoffs at their healthiest, and also playing their best too. And when you think about what when it comes to the style of play and what they're doing in this part of it, and you think about the injuries that Florida has sustained in these last few games, it when you look at the plays, Aaron Ekblad gets physical with Yurov Slafkovsky. That's not a matter of laziness. We saw the video of Carter Hagee. At least I saw the video of his last shift against the Toronto Maple Leafs just the other day, and nothing told me as far as that of what the injury was. Maybe a hit that got him on his left arm. He is a left-handed shot, so that's the shot that you have to push off from. Use a lot of force there too. So when it comes to the injuries, it's not a matter of laziness on back checks or losing your fair share of board battles where you're getting your skate caught and then maybe you hit your head on the ice too, and you have an awkward fall. It's not a matter of that too. Yeah, the back checking could be a lot better for the Panthers, and that's a reason for a lot of their stick infractions. When you're not fast on your back checks, you are gonna get caught. And you lose your battles, and you're trying to stop a transition opportunity. Those are gonna happen. So I don't see it as a result of laziness as far as that. And when it's crazy because again, the question of Paul Maurice and when it comes to his past media availability of we know why they're going on their streak, got a comment saying it's because they're coasting. I really do not believe that they are coasting, at least in my opinion, because you see the fact that the Florida Panthers are consistently fighting after whistles. I mean, even in the Boston game, I mean, Nico Mikkola, Brad Marchand, and then Hampus Lindholm trying to still uh, put up the fist against Sam Bennett, even though Bennett had Hampus Lindholm down and had grabbed him from the back of the neck too, and still continuing to try. I mean, yeah, you're trying to enforce your will. You're fighting even at the end of the game, even after a loss against the Carolina Hurricanes just a few weeks ago too, and even when you're getting manhandled by Montreal. And it's funny because Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts and the Jeff Merrick show just the other day were just talking about the Florida Panthers and how the Panthers, when they lose, they are sore losers and all. And it's funny because when I first hear that, I'm thinking, yeah, the Panthers are sore losers. And it wasn't something that I was offended by when I first heard it, because you think about the ride that Florida went on last season and just that hunger level of trying to get back. When you see any signs of that going away, or that they could be going in an opposite direction that might not be reflective of that postseason performance, you're gonna get angry. You're gonna get frustrated. And sometimes even your food doesn't taste good whenever you off the ice, because things are going so badly on the ice. And listen, it's a when it comes to Paul Maurice, going back to the other day when he says he's not going to be doing any name calling, he's not going to be going on any tirades. If anything, that's going to be behind the scenes too. Hey, but I could be wrong. Things could change. And my tune can change too. These are on the record when it comes to my thoughts about what they're saying. But hey, that could totally change based on the game results. So take also what I say with a grain of salt too. But take the whole sore loser thing as a compliment when you hear people call the Florida Panthers sore losers when it comes to that. Because you tasted a little bit of glory last season and you just want to get back to that. And when you see 2-7-10, where you haven't where there's an opportunity for the team that's chasing you right behind you in the Toronto Maple Leafs, they still have that chance to get home ice, which right now the Panthers, their magic number to clinch home ice in round one is down to 10. It's funny because on March 25th, that was 16. And the Panthers only gained 6 points on that magic number since that. So still, with regardless of all that, the Panthers are still very much in control. But what it comes down to is just attention to detail too. And and listen, you could see coasting in different ways. There's different ways to look at it when it comes to that. When you're trying to not make a risk for an injury, sometimes that's how you get injured. And sometimes when it comes to maintaining the style of play, you are going to have a bit of lapses, but I don't think it's intentional for the Panthers to have a whole bunch of their lapses. And unfortunately for the Panthers, it's had a trickle effect throughout the whole team where their goaltenders are left to dry. Sergei Bobrovsky, for him, it's this last stretch has been for him likely the reason why he's not going to win the Vezina. He's still going to be a finalist, but he's not going to win it. Although all of this is not his fault in entirely. Too, the play around, which also the Panthers aren't getting any goal support on the power play neither. Since the start of their losing streak, the Panthers are dead last in power play percentage at just under 7% too. And let's not forget all the issues for the Panthers started before this 2-7-1 stretch, because before that first game of this last 10 game stretch was that game in Dallas where they had to do it in comeback fashion too. And based on that third period, which we saw multiple special teams goals for the Panthers in a 3.5 minute span. It could look a lot worse when it comes to this for the Cats. So all in all, regardless, the Panthers still are very much in control, which it's kind of hard to get out of that too when this much of a stretch of 10 games in an 82 game season are happening. I mean, yes, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very low percentage, but it's all about timing too when it comes to getting to the finish line of the regular season. But let's ask the question right before we head into segment number 2 and ask, how many more games does Sergei Bobrovsky start? We are going to discuss that and more here on Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. And do you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer from the retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. The offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker dealer. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Back on this Thursday, April 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday. So we spoke all about the Panthers trying to get to that finish line, and we are just anticipating and just want the playoffs to be here. But personally, for me, I don't want the playoffs to begin right now. I want the Panthers to get their game right. I'm sure a lot of you guys out there do too when it comes to that, because 16 days, excuse me. But who's counting? Who's counting? The NHL officially announced that the Stanley Cup playoffs game 1 will be played on April 20th. So lots to still take care of, because I mean, even around the NHL calendar, there's a lot of games that affect seeding. Maybe not necessarily for the Panthers, because honestly, I've accepted the fact that it's either going to be Tampa Bay or Toronto, which, by the way, the Tampa Bay Lightning went into the Scotiabank Arena and got a big win over the Toronto Maple Leafs, which Morgan Riley was back in the lineup, and still they they found a way to win that by final score of 4-1. I mean, what Kucherov has been doing this season, there's a 40-point gap between him and the next closest guy on his team in Braden Point, too. So just he's carrying them on their back. Andre Vasilevsky is hot. I know the Panthers say that they don't care who they play. Honestly, when you have to send that message to the locker room too. You have to, because if you're talking about, oh, we want to avoid this, you're playing scared, and you can't be playing scared in this league. And the thing is, and this isn't the question whether they are. I don't want people to mistake that too. But personally, for me, just looking at it as an outsider and someone who who watches these games and sees the ebbs and flows too, and you see history too, resume. Honestly, I would rather the Panthers face the Leafs. Yeah, the Panthers lost to them recently, but still, I mean, they lost to Tampa recently too, part of their bad stretch. But regardless, as far as sample size, as far as resume, too, you if you psych in the back of your head, you're thinking that you probably want the Toronto Maple Leafs there, and this really helps because they had the 2 games in hand last night, going into last night, and now 4 points behind. So it's still 2-7-1, and you're still in the driver's seat for at least second, which the Panthers, they still have work to do, even to get that top spot, too, uh, when it comes to that. So, and it's crazy because it's going to be interesting on how the goaltending rotation is going to look like from here on out. I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be on the back-to-back at the end of the season. First one will be in Sunrise on April 16th, and then the second end will be in Amalie Arena. So how are the Leafs going to are they going to start Wall? Are they going to start Samsonov when they make it to Sunrise? And if the Panthers clinch their spot, likely there's a chance that we see Anthony Stolarz in game 82. So that now begs the question: how many games does Sergei Bobrovsky start down the stretch too? When it comes to that, I could see a possibility where Stolarz even starts tonight against the Ottawa Senators and just say, hey, and I know Stolarz went into the third period against the Toronto Maple Leafs, started the whole game against the Ottawa Senators, but maybe this is that time. And it goes back to the whole coasting conversation, or the Panthers coasting, which we can anticipate also Matthew Tkachuk hopefully being back too. Brother versus brother, you're going to see a lot of you're going to see a lot of family there too, for them. But also, it's all about being fresh. Sergei Bobrovsky, when you think about the last stretch of the season last year, where he didn't play in the final 6 and wasn't inserted until game 3. It took a little bit for Bobrovsky to really get into form, but that whole few weeks off had him fresh. And Sergei Bobrovsky, he's been such a workhorse this year, healthy, which has been such a luxury for the goaltending department for the Panthers. Health has been such a luxury too. And with Anthony Stolarz not getting a big bulk of the starts, this could be he's not going to start probably for the rest of the season once we get back past April 16th. So this is that opportunity for the Panthers to get a few starts for Stolarz, because I'm anticipating Bobrovsky getting the start on that 3:30 nationally televised game, which, speaking of, Paul Maurice is definitely aware of how tough this road trip is. As he said, even the toughest part is that the last one is a matinee on the road too. And also, I want to go back to just something that Dan Rosen of NHL.com asked Paul Maurice in the first Rangers road game at the beginning of March, when they were as scorching hot as can be. Also, very memorable game as far as highlights, with Barkov, that incredible goal of uh, of tapping the puck in the air and still getting the shot off too. And and the question was, is the only problem that this is happening in March. And Paul Maurice agreed to it, and even Maurice said that uh, a stretch after that is going to happen, because a bad stretch, he means. Because think about this. Even with the Panthers in their skid, 2-game skid, 2-7-1. They're still 10th in the NHL in points percentage since the All-Star break. Obviously, that start from the Panthers, even though it didn't start so hot against the Philadelphia Flyers at home, they still found a way to still get hot and all. And it just, I guess why we are overreacting so much, which is again valid, is because of where it's going on in the season. I mean, think about it. 6 of their last 10, you gave up 4 goals or more. And only one game in the last 10 had been less than 3 goals. Oh, yeah. And in the one game that you gave up less than 3 goals, The Philadelphia Flyers doubled the amount of shots as the Florida Panthers, and the Panthers only had 15 shots on net. Hey, also comes down to goaltending when it comes to the Flyers, which the John Tortorella refused to answer questions on Felix Samstrom. That after that game, which honestly now the Philadelphia Flyers brought one of their goaltending prospects from Russia who had his KHL contract terminated. So now Ivan Fedotov is his name, 6'8" goaltender, which in the same week the Florida Panthers and the Philadelphia Flyers signed two 6'8" goaltenders too. One which the most recent one was Cooper Black, which the Panthers saw in decamp. But also that with it's going to be a difficult stretch for Florida too, because just last week Maurice was talking about, oh, I want to get my lines settled for the most part settled in by the last game of the road trip. Well, without Carter Verhaeghe and with Ekblad going down and not knowing his status too, well, at least not us not knowing his status, but I mean, Juvis Velinskis has been called up too. So that gives you an indication of where the injury status is at with Aaron Ekblad. I'm not gonna predict that Ekblad is going to play tonight. The Panthers are about an hour and a half before they take the ice for morning skate. We're recording this at 10:04 a.m. on a Thursday morning, so don't anticipate Aaron Ekblad to be in the lineup for the Cats there. And it's crazy because you think about this stretch where the only game that you give up less than 3 goals, Philly has been slowly falling apart too, and it's been, like I said, game 82 for them. It's going to be against the Washington Capitals, so that could be for either the final spot or the third spot. And it's crazy because before the Florida Panthers went on this stretch, that last game, that game before that we mentioned earlier was against Dallas, and now Dallas has won 8 straight too. So it's crazy how the ebbs and flows of the season go when it comes to that. And it's a great opportunity for the Panthers tonight in a game where they go to the Canadian Tire Center and face against a team that they have owned their number. But yes, in the last game we spoke about the Panthers owning the Montreal Canadiens, and look how that turned out. But it's also another opportunity for the Panthers to just get back to their form, and they will be doing that tonight against the Ottawa Senators, which we'll be previewing next on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle. Level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, April 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday. Also, I mentioned the Florida Panthers and their magic number to clinch the second spot, at least in the Atlantic Division. The Charlotte Checkers, our magic number to clinch a playoff spot is at 1. So the Checkers do not play until Saturday when they welcome in the Hartford Wolfpack, which Spencer Knight and Mackie Samoskevich love playing the team from their home state. So based on different results, with the Checkers being off, they could actually clinch before they take the ice again on Saturday. So wanted to start off that segment on a little bit of a farm update as far as the Checkers and what's going on there. Also, Lucas Carlson posted him on crutches based on his injury for his torn ACL. We wish Lucas Carlson the the best in his recovery and hoping that he can get back on the ice. So the Florida Panthers facing off against the Ottawa Senators. The last time these two teams met were on February 20th, where the Panthers were at the end of their 6-game winning streak. That was the last one of their winning streak and winning 12 of 13. Man, were the Panthers on such a emotional high as far as the as coming out of the All-Star break, and eight out of out of the last 10 in this matchup has gone into in favor of the Florida Panthers, which the only two losses you think about the President's Trophy winning season, where they lost 8-2, and then the 2 days before that major meltdown with Paul Maurice on the Panthers bench in Toronto. The game before, the Panthers gave up 3 shorthanded goals to the Senators, and that's really what happened with the boiling point. But really, since that, the Panthers have just been owned the Senators, and this is that perfect time for the Panthers to just get their power play right, because the PK for the Senators, third worst in the league at 74.1% to the Panthers 8. Power play for the Senators, which the PK for the Panthers in this stretch has been the least of their issues. They're 11th since March 16th. So March 14th, excuse me. So the Panthers are 11th in that category. So honestly, if you're around that number, in at least floating around the top 10, it's not the end of the world, because but for the Panthers, as far as getting their power play going, that's really what's been the big issue, because the Panthers, we've mentioned this for weeks, their 5-on-5 scoring is in the bottom third, and they're just not getting enough goals to outscore their problems. Even though the Panthers stylistically, they are not that type of team as far as a team that can outscore their problems. So uh, when you're not preventing high danger chances, it's going to show when your offense just doesn't make up for it. But the Ottawa Senators, they're 6-4-0 in their last 10 with wins against the Winnipeg Jets, which the Winnipeg Jets, they've been teetering a little bit, as now they have fallen into third in the Central Division. I mean, question is Connor Hellebuck starting too many games? Is he being worn out? And that's the question between the two guys who are at the tops of the Vezina Trophy race, and about being tired and all. And this is why we had that conversation in the last segment. Should Bobrovsky get more rest? Also, the other game where the Ottawa Senators got a big win as far as highlight wins in their 6-4-0 in the last 10. The other one was against the Edmonton Oilers, where 4 out of the 5 goals that they scored were not at 5-on-5, 3 power plays and an empty net, which the Panthers, yeah, you see power play numbers for the Senators, and you see 22nd in the NHL. Honestly, there's still, regardless of all that, there's still a lot of firepower on this Ottawa Senators team. You think about Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, Claude Giroux, and the Senators, they've had Shane Pinto back now for a while after all of his off ice issues with in relations to gambling too. So you gotta this is not a team that you could take lightly, because they have been not necessarily knocking on the door, but there's been a lot of promise as far as trying to get this team through and finally break that door open to get into the playoffs. I mean, we spoke about the 3 teams in the Atlantic divisions to watch out for: Buffalo, Ottawa, or Detroit. Looks like that Detroit is going to be that team to break through, despite a very thin blue line for them. And also, so much drama off the ice continuing with everything that happened with Pierre Dorion, DJ Smith, DJ Smith is now behind the bench with the LA Kings too. And also, there's some rumors about Jacob Chikrin possibly wanting out of Ottawa, which Jeff Chikrin, who we know from Valley Sports Florida, spoke about how Jacob gets has an opportunity for family, specifically his grandfather, to attend every single game too. So that whole Jacob Chikrin wants out of Ottawa, I don't necessarily buy it, especially now that Jeff Chikrin spoke about it publicly too. So but as far as the game, I mean, neither of the goaltenders, Jonas Korpisalo or Anton Forsberg, have over a 900 save percentage too on the season. So even though the penalty disparity for the Panthers has not gone in their favor, this is the opportunity to muscle up, win your board battles, draw some penalties, because if Matthew Tkachuk especially is going to be back in the lineup, one of the guys who forces the opposition to take penalties the most, that's going to be important as far as gaining your confidence back. Oh my goodness, if especially it, things could change so quickly in the National Hockey League. If you get even one or two power play goals based on how the lack thereof in the last 10, man, could that change things? Because you look at the schedule for the Panthers after the road trip, you think you three out of the four teams that they're welcoming in aren't postseason teams, and that last one against Toronto might mean nothing. I mean, Ottawa, Columbus, Buffalo. Not to look too far ahead, too, but how important it is to finish this stretch really strong. Which, by the way, and I am probably we're probably going to see the Panthers honoring Jeff Rimmer, the original voice of the Florida Panthers, when they play the Columbus Blue Jackets coming up in the next week. Which he's one of the first faces you see as far as honoring him in the Panthers press box. Him there, you see him, Michael Russo, Mulder, Steve Goldstein, George Richards. Jeff Rimmer is on that wall, based on spending the first 10 years with the franchise right before going to the Columbus Blue Jackets as far as their broadcast crew starting in 2004. So big congratulations to Jeff Rimmer, who's going to call it a career after this. But still, when it comes to going back to this stretch and how important it is to finish strong, the net front is going to be as important as can be, which the Ottawa Senators have a hard time projecting. You don't want to get into a track meet too with these guys, because these guys are fast, and the Panthers, listen, thankfully, over the over the 75 games of the season, 76, excuse me, the Panthers are still one of the tops as far as not giving up rush chances too. Do they take a lot of penalties? Yeah, and that is a matter of physical play and all, and and but thankfully, once again, like I said, their penalty kill, they're still able to take to kill off those penalties, something that we didn't really see much last year. So that is a part that I'm very confident in, but you got to make up for it on the offensive end when it comes to getting scores on the power play and all, because yeah, are the opposition adjusting as far as not leaving Sam Reinhart open? At the same time, I mean, last game you saw Etu Luostarinen in the Kachuk spot download and trying to feed, and you're not going to get that same production out of Etu from Kachuk, and that's not to knock Etu Luostarinen off of like what he can do. It's just he's just not at the same level, and even Etu would knows it himself, but it doesn't take away from what he brings to the table too. So it's going to be important and it's going to be key, whether we do see Matthew Tkachuk out there at morning skate, how it's going to look as far as the line. And again, this is an opportunity for Vladimir Tarasenko, who's been the least of the Panthers' issues. 10 points in the last 12 games, 5 goals, 5 assists, and really took over the last 20 minutes of the Toronto game as far as that. And he's been just fine. It's not because of the trade deadline. It just happens to be after, and it's not. I you could I don't know if it messes with the chemistry, but as far as getting you into the structure of things, uh, it takes time. And we saw all of last season how it really took until the finish line for them. Thankfully for the Panthers, it's been something as far as getting to the system and getting used to it. It's happened in the beginning. This is just the kind of the growing pains as far as post trade deadline of trying to get everyone and maintaining that focus right before the Panthers do get into the postseason. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for everyone who subscribes on anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And for tomorrow's show, we are going to be bringing in Nick Fairbanks for another edition of Fairbanks Friday, as we are going to recap this game between the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.